Welcome everybody. We were just recapping our favorite animals and not favorite animals. Welcome. So I'm Zack Ritter. I am your host for today, Sunday show. Joe Brooks does the Friday shows. You're tuned into the Spotlight series. We're here with Mahagoney. This is really exciting. Before we get into it, I must say you're tuned into Community Works Institute. Please check out communityworksinstitute.org. They do K through 16 professional development. And we have a K through 16 educator right here today. And they bring the classroom to the community and the community to the classroom. They do a lot of cool stuff. I've been to some of their institutes and I've like even presented at some of their institutes, but check out the website, communityworksinstitute.org. And there's institutes coming up and professional development opportunities. And thank you, Joe Brooks, for letting us utilize this space. Our guest today, I met in an interview and I was just like very attracted to her magnetic personality. Mahagoney Borrayo-Gilchriest. I'm really happy that you're here. You are a history teacher in New Jersey. And then you've done a lot of stuff, and it was like USC, you were doing residential life education stuff and higher ed stuff. So tell the folks who you are.
So two things. It's Borrayo. But I don't blame you. It's a double R that gets everyone. And I not only taught in New Jersey, but I taught at one of the most marvelous institutions in New Jersey, which was Eastside High in Paterson, New Jersey. Definitely going to date myself, but it's cool. It's in the movie Lean on Me. So we put New Jersey on the map for the world, at least to me anyway. I taught history for 4.5 years at that school, and probably one of the highlights of my career, to be honest. And there's been a lot of things that have definitely come close to competing with that, but by far that's probably still one of the best experiences I've had in my professional experience. Shout out to all my Eastside kids. Many of them are tuned in, my babies. At USC, I definitely worked at a residential res ed. And in that capacity, I really did a lot of the party stuff, but the educational partying, right? Because what's a party without education? Where we did a lot of welcome week. We brought a lot of students from all over the country and kind of integrated them into the USC thread. But I wanted to kind of also hit it from a different lens because USC is definitely in the heart of South Central LA, and many people forget that. And as a community member of Los Angeles County and having family members who live in South Central LA, I thought it was very important that the community, especially the new emerging minds and new Trojan family, understood, the responsibility that was on them to make the connection of being in the middle of a low socioeconomic community that almost single-handedly keeps USC thriving in many ways. It's a very reciprocal relationship that I don't think is talked about enough or respected, especially from people who aren't necessarily from the community, but utilize the resources of the community, South Central, which is where USC is. So, but I also love that as well, to be able to kind of educate some young minds who, and I'm going to use this word often, so I guess I should get the clarity out, who are very stupid to what's going on around them. And I always tell my students, I'd rather be stupid than ignorant, right? Because stupid means you just have no idea. But to be ignorant is you are on notice and you're aware, you just choose to ignore what's in front of you, which it's you see a stop sign, but yeah, you let it smack you in the face, kind of dangerous, right? So I really enjoyed that ability to really educate some young people about the beauty of South Central, that it's not just a bunch of danger around you. There's a lot of culture and a lot of really marvelous people that live in the area.
So what made you want to become first a history educator? And you and I were nerding out on some history. So tell us, what was the impetus for that?
Probably, if I'm being honest, my parents, which is super cliche and super mushy. So I'm going to try not to go there because I'm not as mushy and soft as I like to think that I am. Um, but I guess, you know, history really is just, it's about studying in many ways different facts, events, right? But also trying to understand what made the people do that. Why did this happen? Um, and as a young girl, specifically, my mom was really into challenging me about my thinking. Um, my mother was the first to introduce me to Kemetic history and the first introduced to me prior to being indoctrinated in the K through 12 system. You know, we identify as Black Americans. And oftentimes in K through 12, Black American history begins and ends in slavery. Um, and my mother was a firm proponent of, I'm one of six, by the way, six children, was a firm proponent of like, Black history does not begin in slavery. And I refuse to allow you guys to grow up in a deficit mindset of who you are in your existence. So I was always raised, even though we weren't really sure we're on the African continent where the hell we were, it was always like, you are from Africa and the soil there is great and there's greatness there and power there. So I really went into the education system like I am basically God, with the personification of God. But I think that's important, right? To build that self-efficacy and that identity. So when I went into history classes and they're starting with Black history at, you know, this is how slaves, it was always very like pretty packaged. You guys were slaves, but it wasn't terrible. But now you're free. And I was always questioning things. And I blame my mom for that in a really good way, but also my dad, because my dad didn't graduate middle school. He's an immigrant from Guatemala.
Mm.
And he's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And he was also another person that was like, don't be ignorant. Be, if you can, stupid is much better than ignorant, because stupid means that you want to learn. Ignorant means that you don't care. And I was like, all right, I'm stupid. So imagine going into class, it's like, I'm stupid and I want to learn. And then Mr. Tornick, who was my high school history teacher, and Pasadena Public Schools did me really well with him. He was probably one of the greatest history teachers I've ever had in my life. And he challenged the way that I looked at history and how I interacted with history.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and I actually want to be an attorney, right? But attorneys and historians are kind of like best friends. We just don't know it yet. So that's the very long-winded, abbreviated, believe it or not, version of how I got into loving all things old. And I think it's important to understand the makeup, the genetic, philosophical, ideological makeup of what makes things tick so that we don't make the same mistakes, right? And to understand those key players and how they develop the society that we live in now. Because the best way to attack a machine, I don't know if anybody's ever seen Incredibles, right? But in Incredibles, it's like it learns how to attack different things. It attacks your movements. And then Mr. Incredible is like, if I attack it, it will attack itself. I forgot what the freaking little blob was. But that's like a real thing, right? If you learn how the mechanism works, you are better in a position to not necessarily reform it, because we've tried to reform the system, but to destroy it without destroying the good things. Because there are some good things, some being the emphasis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. My friend was talking to me yesterday about this historical philosopher, and I'm forgetting his name, because he made a joke that his name sounds like Punani, but it's not Punani. So I'm getting it stuck in my head. But I don't want to say the wrong thing here. But this person whose name sounds like Punani was talking about like the yin and the yang, that a society, in order to maintain and progress, should be half capitalism, half socialism, like yin and yang, which I thought was just an interesting little thing to think about. And like there are some good stuff to what the way society is built right now. I mean, some, but it's built on some really, really ugly things of genocide and anti-Black racism. And now the media is now talking more about anti-Asian American histories, Chinese Exclusion Act, 1882, all that stuff. So did you feel like in your classrooms that there's like history as a liberatory device for your students to think in a different way that maybe like would change the way they navigated through their lives?
I like to think so. I always kind of use the amplitude of I'm just one of the many artists that got to paint on the canvas, which would be my student.
Mm.
Um, and my hope is that because my favorite color is yellow this year, right? Um, that I got to be that yellow outlining that kind of maybe changed the way that they identify themselves and thought about themselves
Mm.
and remove themselves from deficit thinking um, into asset thinking, right? Because we know the negative stuff.
Mm.
Um, in my classrooms, I was really a big proponent of I don't want you to look at this from what the winners say, and we're the winners. You know, there's something to be said about power and agency and our ability to move in between those two as I like to, often refer to as the people of the oppressed, right? Or the oppressed persons,
Mm.
where we oftentimes think of we're always under that microscope of oppression, but there's power as well that lives there. But we're
Mhm.
so oftentimes in a space of fighting each other. I think you and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, fighting each other about who's been oppressed more, whose oppression is worse, or whose oppression hurts the most. Oppression is oppression is oppression. Hurt is hurt is hurt. Um, to the degree that you can see or your proximity as, I like to use the idea of a boat, right? We're all on the boat together. It's just a matter of where you sit on that boat to be able to see the iceberg, and the iceberg would be white privilege or the ability to benefit from white privilege. So
Mhm.
your proximity is your proximity to whiteness on that boat, and you don't benefit from the iceberg being in the middle of the ocean
Mhm.
and the boat coming at it and essentially destroying the boat and everything on it. But you can benefit in understanding, oh, okay, I know that I can create a plan to escape this much better than the people in the back of the boat.
Mm.
And you know what I mean? So for me, I would always come in with my students and I really wanted them to understand that their voices had power collectively and individually, to use their agency as students to hold their school and school district accountable for their learning and their well-being.
Mm.
Money will be found
Mm.
if you uprise. There's
Mm.
a reason why they ask you to come out to the district meetings, but there's only the same five parents who have the same kids. But the school district relies on all of these students and these parents in order for them to actually have a salary. So it's important that, time is currency. And I remember, talking to my students, like, money should not be at the forefront of your mind. It should be time,
Mm.
because time is the real currency. And your agency, along with time, will really be able to afford you to demand the things that you deserve. And teaching that from a historical lens, right?
Mm.
Talking about the women's suffrage.
Mm.
And even in speaking in that, I remember having the conversation about feminism. And one of my students, Zamira, I don't know if well, she's 18, so I can say her name. Zamira, I remember her asking me, like, Ms. B, but are you a feminist?
Mm.
And I remember at that time, I hadn't read any of the literature um, on Black feminism. Andre Lorde was something that I had read in passing, but not really intentional,
Mm.
you know? And I was like, no, I'm the opposite of feminism. I'm a Black woman. And the ideology of looking at that intersectionality, if I could go back in that classroom, because I still speak to Zamir, um,
Mm.
but if I could go back in that classroom, I think I would have changed um, maybe my answer. Not that I'm not a feminist, but the way that I identify with feminism as it pertains to women's suffrage is very different, because
Mm.
they purposely kept Black women out.
Mhm.
Um, they purposely kept women who identified as Asian descent out.
Mm.
If you didn't identify as white, middle class female, you were out.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember us talking about that. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean for an oppressed group of individuals who are women to want to be able to vote but also being very exclusive in who they were speaking to.
Hmm.
And I think it's important that we have those discussions so that we're able to really address the holes. Like the one thing I really appreciated about Black Lives Matter, the revival, if you will, at the unfortunate expense, or the bow breaking, if you will, with the murder of George Floyd, was that it wasn't just we're isolating our lens to just Black lives. This is not just about Black lives, it is. But when Black people win, we all win. And really, and
Uh-oh. I think we lost you for a minute here. Dun, dun, dun. Technology is failing us. Uh-oh. Oh, there she is. Hey.
hey,
Hey.
I was like my Wi-Fi really today.
It, it's just,
But I say all that to say that I think that it's important as communities that we collaborate.
yeah, no, it's just COINTELPRO not wanting you to talk about BLM. No, go ahead. It's the FBI. Go ahead. Tell us. So George Floyd is murdered, and then you were saying.
I really believe that it's important that, especially, and I want to say this as well, in honoring our Asian Pacific Islander and Desi, which I recall, if I read this beautiful thread that this marvelous woman on LinkedIn, I recently was reading a post that she had, our family on that side, right? That we understand that their struggle is our struggle as Black people, as people that are the oppressed, right? Because none of us are ever going to be free and really be able to thrive and live our best lives, right? If all of us aren't able to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important for me to highlight,
Mm-hmm.
is that we all must be able to thrive and live our lives to the fullest in order for us to all really call ourselves free.
Mm. Mm. So let's go on that real quick. We've talked a little bit about, being biracial, being mixed race, however people want to categorize that. What is it like doing some of this work, being an activist, being a teacher, being an educator as a Black Latina woman? I mean, I'm sure you get it from all types of sides with that. So I don't know, speak on that.
I'm not going to sit here and say that it's all like peaches and cream and it's amazing, but I will say that I have a sense of freedom that I don't feel a lot of people um, who don't identify like me, right, as a woman. There's power in being a woman. Um, for me, there's power, especially within the Black American community, right? The woman holds a lot of power in her voice, even if you just think about those, euphemisms of like, you can't say that at Big Mama's house. You better chill out because like your granddad sitting back like, hey, you know how your grandma is, you better. So there's that underlying power that I grew up with, and even in my Latina side, my stepmother, who I often endearingly call mommy as well, there is a sense of authority that she holds in our household, where it's like, even my dad would be like, hey, ask mommy, I don't know. Whatever mommy says, that's what we're gonna do. And I appreciate that. Now, I can't say that that's the narrative for everyone, but for me in my household, that was always, I saw that as a child. So when I walk into these spaces, it's difficult because everyone does not come from that background. Everyone does not understand that when I speak, as quoting, the big homie Tupac, who I love, who you and I both know, when I speak, I scream, even if I'm not screaming. When I speak, there is power in my voice. You hear the thunder. Even if what I'm saying is not intended to be intense, it comes off intense. It's like, I'm like, Zach, I love you. And you're like, whoa, that's intense. And it's like, but the passion behind what I'm saying is like, I love you and I want you to thrive. And the same fervency that I'm going to put in having your back,
Mm.
I expect that energy to be presented to the world. And everybody's not like that, Zach. everybody is not trying to burn down the establishment philosophically or actual factual, you know? And I think for me, that's been the hardest thing, is being able to not soften my voice. And I don't mean like I know I'm raspy, you know, but soften it in the sense that I'm not saying it in the sense of anger. I'm not the angry Black person, the angry Latina girl, the angry Latina woman or Black woman. I'm passionate. And if at any point you don't see that passion, check my pulse, because something's not right. You know what I mean? Like something's not right. And I'm not gonna lie, I've scared a lot of white men. Scared a lot of white men. Because I come in and I'm like, hey, I got balls too. So let's let's have these conversations. But I've also had my feelings hurt too in those processes, because I have to remind myself I'm not a white man. And I'm not able to navigate this space like a white man can. And that's been a rude awakening in some of the roads that I've navigated. But that's okay too, because it hasn't stopped me. It's just kind of changed the, what is that when you're driving and it's like rerouting? You know, I'm still on my way to my destination. I just got rerouted. Like, yeah, probably wasn't my exit. But I think that 2020 for me, right? They say you have 2020 vision, got perfect vision. 2020 for me was really that moment, and I wear glasses, so that says a lot. Was really that vision for me of like, I'm no longer going to lead with, I'm a Black woman, I'm Latina, and you're gonna hear my voice, and I'm not gonna cry when I'm upset. I'm not going to be, I'm not gonna show you who I am because I have to be strong. There's strength in being able to say that hurt my feelings. There's strength in saying like, no, you're not gonna disrespect me. That bothered me, and I need you to be mindful in the way that you address me, my community, or my co-conspirator in the room with me. Because I want to move past allyship. That's great. You know the language. That's great that, you want to stand near me, or you want to say, hey, I read the books and I got your back. Really have my back. Really have my back. When you see that I'm being disrespected, covertly, right? Because covert racism, covert, insulting is a real thing. And it's more powerful than over. It's more powerful than just calling me a nigger or a wetback, right? It's so much more powerful, because that, at least I can see you coming. But it's the other things of like, oh my God, you speak so well. Where are you from? Or your parents, you're Black? Oh, I would have never thought you were Black. Like, but what does that mean? Right? Like, what does that mean? I will never forget, my dad was dropping me off at a dance. And my dad drove a pickup truck. My dad's a contractor. But he was driving a pickup truck, and he's this little like 5'4" man. I'm taller than my dad. I'm excited about that. And he was taking me to the young man's house who I was going to the homecoming dance with. And I remember I walked in and his mother got ready to close the door. Because my dad was a few steps behind me. He's like, go ahead, Mika, go ahead. I'm coming. And my dad has the thickest accent. It's so funny. And I always laugh at him because I'm like, very, Papi, I'm very happy. He's like, I'm very happy. And she got ready to close the door. And I remember turning around, I was like, my dad's out there. And she goes out and she looks. And she's like, I don't see anyone. And my dad's just jogging up. And she's like, is this your dad? And I was like, yeah, it's my dad. She goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought you were the gardener. And my dad, as quick-witted as he is, he's like, oh, I'll be back next week to trim the hedges, but I'm here to drop her off today. But that's something that we can joke about now, but it's something that really, I think, in that moment, my dad and I had like a real moment where we both realized like, yo, they don't see us as like a part of their community. And that really hurt. And I didn't say anything. And that's one of those moments for me where it was like, I have to be strong. I can't let you know that it bothers me. Just laugh it off. And 2020 for me was like, hell no, I'm past that. If I see things or hear things that bother me, whether they're directly at me or one of the people that I love, because I interact with everyone like family, right? So I love you even if I don't know you. I love you because you're a human being. It's like, no, that's not cool, and we're not going to talk to each other that way. So I know that was really long-winded, and I told you, I can get really long-winded and super like, like, okay.
I mean, look, that's what we do on this show, and you can't talk about the career without talking about identity and microaggressions and racism and the trauma that comes from all that, because that's what we bring into the work. It's everything. It's all interconnected. So, all right, there's a lot of things I want to ask you. Well, one thing I'm curious about is we have a lot of K through 16 educators that listen to these shows, and people get burnt out from teaching. And I know in your story that you left teaching and you went into the realm of higher ed. Tell folks how that happened and how that looked.
Well, first of all, tell my educators, I see you. I love you. You guys are the best. You are molding legit, not just tomorrow, but tomorrow's leaders. And I know that it's hard, baby. I know there were nights that it was a meme many years ago where it's like, it was a teacher throwing all the papers in the air. And it was like, F this, I don't need this, I quit. And then the teacher was collecting the papers like, oh shit, it's only Thursday, I need the check, like, and collecting all their papers, right? So if you are there, I am with you in solidarity. I think for me, we don't burn out. And I think I can say this with like the firmest stomp, right? I don't like to speak for most people, but this is one thing I think I will speak for all educators. We don't burn out because we get tired of our babies. We burn out because we get tired of the bureaucracy over us. We burn out because we are often bombarded with the logistics of how to be a teacher. It's like, look, first of all, I am not making enough money to buy the supplies for my classroom, my coffee that I desperately need to have the energy to get through these 5 classes if you're in, secondary, or to deal with these kindergartners, which I have had my taste of this year because I have a 5-year-old, and I tell her teacher all the time that she is basically baby Jesus in the flesh, because why? So shout out to all the K through 2nd grade teachers. You guys are the best. You deserve better pay. But it's all of that. And it's like, you want me to do all of this. And I didn't come into this field because I knew I was going to become a millionaire. I came into the field because I have a real love for it, right? Anybody can be a teacher, right? Read the book. This is what we're learning. Give out a worksheet. Everybody can't be a teacher. Okay? There's a difference in that. You have to really have skin in this. This really has to be your jam. You have to really love what you do. And not just the putting on the board, and telling the kids this is what we're learning. You have to really like love seeing those little faces. And I'm not just talking about the babies, because those high school kids are babies too, right? And I think for me, I walked away because I was no longer a good teacher because I was tired. And I remember walking into my classroom. I was working at Great Falls Academy. Shout out to my Great Falls Academy kids, which is now the Al Moody Alternative School in Patterson. And I remember walking into the class, and I told my students, I said, guys, this is it. I'm really done. And whenever they would piss me off, I'd be like, I quit. I'm not coming back. And they all joked, they're like, Miss B, please, you always talking about you're gonna leave. And I started crying and they knew it was real. And they were like, oh shit, Miss B's really leaving. Um, and like to see me cry was a big deal because they would come in my class and I'm listening like the edited version of Tupac or the edited, music of Nas, or we're listening to instrumentals as they come in, because music for me has always been a place of peace. So I wanted to introduce that to my kids, right? My babies, which is also another lesson that I ended up working in down the line. But and I told them it's not you, it's the system. And I can't battle with the system anymore. And that's not to say that I didn't have a great supervisor. My principal, Zatiti, was amazing. He is probably one of the best principals I've ever had. But there's only so much that he can do to keep from what's top bottom, right? Because we're still talking about very micro levels. And it's that stuff. It's the paperwork. It's the, you need to teach it this way. It's the, we got to make sure we're on the curriculum maps. You can't stray away from the curriculum maps because our kids aren't testing right. We got to teach to the test. We've got to make sure that the kids are testing well. And it's like, these tests are not designed for children in the hood to thrive. These tests are not designed to really show that they're intelligent. Because if a test were to do that, I'm in a doctoral program right now at USC. If my California, whatever the hell the test was back then, the standardized test, had any say, I was in special ed in the 7th grade. And my math teacher, Mrs. Tremonti, called my mom and was like, she's super disruptive. She does not listen. She sits in the front. I had to make her sit in the back because at least in the back, she's in the back talking to herself and not in the front with me and the other students. She does not belong in this class. And my mom then saying, well, why is she in your class? And my mom going to the guidance counselor. Mrs. Tremonti was, and I do not know the exact location in the Asian diaspora, but she was of Asian descent, Southwest Asian descent. And my guidance counselor was a white female, and I went to a upper middle class school because my mother was very adamant on can't go to school in the neighborhood we live because they don't have the resources that they do over here in the mountains. And I was one of the first kids bused at that school. And this white middle class woman, God bless her heart. I'm sure that I don't know, I'm not going to make an excuse for her, so I'm going to let that go. But she looked at my mom and was like, Mahogany scored very low. So that's why we placed her in the remedial classes. It's like she can't read or write. I don't test well. I don't like testing. Like, I would just mark C, and then I started making designs with the bubbles because I'm like, ooh,
that's what I did. Yeah.
I'm like, if I do, I'm gonna make a flower. So I'm pretty sure they thought something was wrong with my ass. Like, she's on her little bubble sheet, she's making designs. What's wrong with this kid? Yeah, she belongs in that. But and I noticed that my babies were those kids. So if at the school level, at the K-12 level, if that is how we are measuring the art students' intelligence, we've got it all wrong. My babies were able to get themselves dressed, get their sisters and brothers dressed if they were in the home, assist grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, whoever was in the household with making sure that the household was able to run, because mom and dad are working professionals who are working odd hours, and they have to make sure that the house doesn't fall apart. You know what I'm saying? And they're able to make it to school, maybe a few minutes late, but they make it to school on time. They have a backpack. It may not have all the paper in it that, they're all their homework, and the homework may not have been able to get done because they're like, look, bro, I just need a break. I need a mental break. So the fact that you were able to make it to my classroom door and that you were able to make it past all of those very adult tasks that I have a difficult time getting through. I have one kid trying to get myself, her, and at the same time making sure that I don't burn the house down while making her waffles in the morning is hard enough. And I'm a grown up. Imagine being between the ages of 15 and 18 to have to do that. And not because your parents are just shitty parents, but because they're trying to make sure that you have food to burn down the house with.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, I say this to say that in the K-12 level, we really need to do a lot better at understanding the intersectionalities of the communities that we serve
Mm.
that aren't wealthy,
Right.
that don't have the tutors to make sure that we can test well,
Mm.
um, that don't have the resources.
Mm.
And I don't just mean, hey, you got a laptop, you can Google it, or we're going to give you a book to show you how to do it. But the resources, which is time,
Mm.
the freedom to be a kid,
Mm.
we need to do better at that.
Mm.
Give them an education that really will position them to thrive and not just one that has worked in the past, because clearly it didn't work
Mm-hmm.
because the system remains the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what did you find when you went into higher ed? I mean, there were issues in the K through 12 arena. Was it as fulfilling? Was it not? Did you like the bureaucracy in higher ed? Like, what was your transition like?
In higher ed, I realized that a lot of the same babies that I saw in Patterson, I saw at this very prestigious private institution
Yeah.
that had all the resources in the world, but they didn't know how to navigate those resources. Um, because that's a skill. It's a skill to know how to navigate education in itself. It's a skill to know how to navigate post-secondary spheres, which is why it took me so long to earn my bachelor's, because it's a real skill. And for me, I found that it was like, okay, I am now big mama, as my husband endearingly calls. I'm now big mama. I'm the one that's going to help facilitate, be the major connector of like, look, this place has free money on this campus. It's designated for you. You can do it. Go there. Talk to them. They are there to help you. They are so bored. They are looking for you. Go to them. Talk to them. Or you're struggling with this. Great. Go to this mental health service. You get this for free. Go here. And I really was fulfilled in that. And I also learned how to navigate the system, not just for myself,
Mm.
but a lot of my past students in New Jersey have now they're in post-secondary spheres, and or they're filling out applications. And I'm like, hey, remember that stuff I was telling you about reaching out to admissions officers? It's true.
Mm.
It's true. They told me that it's true. I'm not just telling you this anymore. It's actual factual. So like really kind of learning how to, I don't want to say work the system, because I know that that can have negative connotations, but definitely how to navigate the system. Um, and I think that's important because many post-secondary institutions, once you get to them, it's not that they don't recognize that there's an issue in K-12. It's just like, we don't have any stain in that. Like, LAUSD is not really paying us to make sure that your students are prepared to come here.
Mm.
And when it boils down to, we love to say that education is not transactional, but I'm sorry for those of us who don't believe that it is. Hey, babe, it is. It's transactional. If dollars and cents make sense,
Yeah.
especially in a capitalistic system. So many K-12 institutions are like, yeah, we see the problem, so we will have resources here to try to acclimate you, but there's only so much that we can do because we're trying to work from, from K through 12, which is legit 12 years of your learning of indoctrination
Mm.
to have you acclimated in 6 months,
Mm.
your first semester of college.
Mm.
So I think for me that's also kind of helped me with understanding, like bridging the gaps of how can I be a better, as I like to think of it, liaison.
Mhm.
I like to say it with my hands like this, liaison, from K-12 to the higher ed institution. Like, how can I position myself as that bridge? And
Mm.
maybe not just for one institution, but for all institutions,
Mm.
to be like, hey, here are some best next practices and possibilities to assist students who come from school systems that are not preparing them for post-secondary, but just preparing them for the now and the moment,
Mm.
which is a problem of practice right now, right?
Mm.
I don't want to be prepared just for today. I want to be prepared for the next 4 years after today.
Mm.
So I know that that's a really long-winded answer, but You know, we have the problem of practice of asking 18-year-olds, what do you want to do with the rest of your life?
Yeah.
I'm 31 and I have no clue what I want to do with the rest of my life. I've got the next 10 years down packed, I think.
Hmm.
But to put that on an 18-year-old who was like, dude, I'm just trying to figure out where the hell my class is in this building, or how to like be on a college campus after being online for the past 2 years at this point, right? Um, I just want to know how to thrive.
Yeah.
I just want to thrive.
Yeah.
And we could do better at that as the not the experts, right? But as the seasoned
Yeah.
practicers,
Yeah.
because we're practicing ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No. That's real. I like that, seasoned practitioners. So we talk in these institutions K through 12 and also 16. We talk about DEI work a lot, and
Mm,
sometimes I think it's BS in a way.
mm.
Um,
Oh, we're gonna get real today, Zach. Okay.
yeah, sure. Let's do it. Let's do it. So diversity, inclusion, equity, rarely do we talk about justice. Like, and then we have this designated place on campus where you're supposed to go to get that justice. We're not necessarily going to fund it a lot. If there's protests, the person that runs that center is supposed to calm the Black and brown students and make it okay. Don't talk too much about white supremacy because that's going to upset some of the white folks. There's a lot of bureaucratic diversity work feels like window dressing a little bit, you know. So I don't know, and I don't want to put you on the spot and get you into trouble with something you don't want to say, but so I'll say those are my words. But diversity and inclusion efforts in K through 12, but also in the college arena, what have you seen, and maybe what are some areas that we can grow?
I've seen that we are very reactionary, which is the American way, right? We love to talk about this is not who we are. We are reactionary as F.
Yes.
Okay. We know that the house is burning down, but until the smoke alarm goes off, it's like, oh shit, the house is burning. It's like, yeah, it's been burning. But you need a smoke detector to tell you that. I think I echo your sentiment exactly. And as far as getting me into trouble, I burned hella sage before we started this. And I was like, universe and ancestors, please let me not say some stuff. I ask that you guide my words today, because I will say something I know that I'll be like, damn. And I'm in the market for I'm in the market for a career right now, not a job. I'm getting out of a job. I'm in the market for a career. So I was like, I just don't need to mess up my career. But I'm also in the space too, like if you can't handle it, maybe this isn't my career, right? But I do feel like sometimes DEI, not that the people who are in DEI work, and I mean the people who have been doing this, right? As my grandmother always says, that are true to this, not new to this, right? There's a lot of like DEI professionals who have been doing this work. And now they're a hot commodity and everybody is ringing their phone. And I'm like, what about that economic justice? Make sure that you pay what you owe, you know, because I've been eating bread and butter, sometimes with just canola oil because I don't have enough for butter. And now I'm a thing. I want filet mignon, you know. So I'm advocating for that for all my DEI, OGs, legit. But I do feel like sometimes it's very much just all talk. And I'm past the point of talking. Social justice does not exist without economic justice. And that does not mean just cutting a check and making everything go away. That means offering financial literacy. If we are going to continue to live in a capitalistic environment, we must also be able to educate those that are oppressed and come from oppressed communities, because they are also indoctrinated in oppressive economic strategies and spending. We must educate on how to make their money grow, how to make their money thrive. Don't just cut me a check, because Louis Vuitton will see me coming, they will see me running to buy a purse, and I don't even carry purses, right? And that's a very, egregious example, but very true in many ways, right? You see it in my culture specifically, where with even with rappers, where they get their first check and they have like 15 different chains on it. You know, one of my favorite rappers, J. Cole, says, you know, I got cut my first check and went and got a chain. But the only difference is that this chain is gold and it's no longer the one that binds me, you know, like a slave, but now it's a mental chain, right? It's a mental pulling of like, oh, I gotta have this, I gotta get that. So economic justice means more than just cutting me a check. Economic justice means if I'm gonna have to live in this capitalistic society that we hold so dear to because we're afraid that if we're not living in a capitalistic world that the world's gonna fall apart, you need to be able to educate me on how to be sure that I thrive in this environment as well. And that in turn will also make my social justice initiatives and dreams come true. I think it's great when institutions write letters and say, we're in solidarity with you. We understand you, we feel you. But then everybody on the board is white, male, white, female. Heteronormativity. Or maybe not white, male, female, because I want to get away from just looking at white people being the problem, but white oppressive ideologies, right? Because we talked about that covert racism. Black and brown people, those who do not have close proximity to whiteness, we embody white supremacist thinking much better than I think white supremacists do, if I'm being honest, in a lot of structures, right? And that's scary. That's scary. I have to check myself sometimes. Like legit, where I'm like, that's ghetto. And I'm like, okay, but why is it ghetto, Mahogany? Like what makes that ghetto? Like, you know what I mean? But I don't say that to say like I'm perfect, but what I will say is that rather than institutions throwing out a new center, hey, we support you, and here's also our equity and diversity center for you. When students come to you and say, hey, this happened to me and it bothered me and I need you to like really help me, not pacifying them. Well, did they mean it like that? Ma'am, it's not my job to interpret what they meant. That's your job. You go figure that out. Acknowledge that I was hurt. You see me bleeding, right? You're not going to ask me, oh, I don't think the knife meant to cut you, right? It did. It doesn't matter if it meant to or not. It did. I want to say this too. I want us as community, because even the community members and family members, right, outside of community, our family members who are hella racist, hella homophobic, hella spotted and issued, right? That's what we're just going to name it. Issued and need some tissue. They're still a part of our family, right? They're still part of our family. And we have to get past you don't agree with me, I don't agree with you, we're not going to talk to each other, because growth doesn't happen there. We have to get past of canceling them. What we need to do is educate them. We need to, now, I'll say this slightly, right? Because it's not my job to educate you on every ignorant thing that you do. But once you've been put on notice and I put you on notice and I give you the literature, but yet you still decide to spew that hatred, that nastiness, that spirit of like gunk, then I'm done. Then I'm like, you know what? The universe gonna have to do some more work with you. Like you're gonna have to do, because I'm not it. Like universe, I try, but I would like to not be in jail, you know? But we do have to get to a space where it's like, look, I'm gonna put you on notice and inform you, because there is something that you can also learn from that person. You know, many people who believe that they're super pro-Black or super pro, Asian rights, or super pro Jewish, rights, or super pro Native American rights can be very, very, very homophobic, very anti-LGBTQIA plus. Like, let's talk about it. So you foster some of those same, and I love my grandmother, who will remain unnamed. But we have conversations about the LGBTQIA plus community often. I have a trans cousin,
Mm,
and she refuses to identify my trans cousin by their pronouns
mm,
because they were not born with those pronouns. I said, well, you weren't born with the name grandma,
right.
yet I call you grandma.
Mm,
And she's like, I just don't understand it. I said, I don't understand why I have to call you grandma. And I was like, I think it's interesting because you grew up in the 60s during a time where you were fighting for your right to be seen in existence as a Black woman, right?
right.
What makes you any different than those white supremacists when it comes to upholding heteronormativity?
Mm,
What makes you any different? Because you hold some of those same ideologies, not the same reasoning, but the same ideologies of, I don't understand it, I don't like it, and because it doesn't make sense to me, I don't want to be a part of it.
mm,
That's what a lot of white supremacists think about people of color.
mm,
They're gonna infringe on our rights to live.
mm,
When you speak about the LGBTQIA community, LGBTQIA plus, excuse me, community,
mm,
you sound just like a white supremacist.
mm,
It's just the language has changed a little. So
mhm,
let's do better at being inclusive, not just because of our skin. You know what I mean?
mm,
And I know that's like a whole nother tangent, but diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't just include how we look.
yeah,
It doesn't at all. And it doesn't mean that I get more because I've been oppressed more and you get less, or we all get equal. It's no, we all should be able to thrive,
mm,
live our fullest lives, and be free in the entirety of its word.
mm.
Because if someone else is oppressed at the expense of you being free, that's not freedom, baby. Because at any point, that can flip. There's a duality in that, right?
That's,
So
no, that's true. That's true. I like that. You are in a transition moment in your career, in your life. I think you mentioned that you're also a mother. Um, this is a big 2020, a lot of clarity. Like this is a big moment for you. And what does an ideal, not just surviving but thriving future and career look like for you? Like if you had your dream kind of I don't know, future, what would it look like?
I'm basically Pinky in the brain. I go in between being Pinky and sometimes being the brain. I feel like Pinky's underestimated and he gets no respect put on his name. But I don't want to rule the world. I want to change the world. Um, and
Mm,
that doesn't mean me physically. That means lighting lights. I shared this with you in my interview. My favorite quote is by Tupac is, I'm not saying that I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. Um, my dream, ideal career, legit, is the US Secretary of Education. That's
mm,
like the ultimate, I've made it, guys. I'm here, right? Um, but not because of the title, because I understand that I will be able to inform the policy that will be trickled down to
mhm,
both K-12 and post-secondary settings. But really to have my dream career, right? Because I said 10 years is where I'm at, is to be able to be in a position where I'll be able to ignite other minds
mm,
to go out and do the work
mm,
um, in spaces and places that I can't reach physically or, realistically.
mm,
I understand that I can't sit at every table,
mm,
and that's okay.
mm,
I can't speak to the issues that the LGBTQIA plus community endure because I'm not part of that community, but I'm part of their family. I can pass the mic and say, look, these are the resources and these are the people that have the ability to make these changes. So we're going to go there together, but I'm going to give you the mic.
mm,
And
mm,
if anybody starts set tripping, hey, sorry, no. You have to stop because they're talking. Here you go, take the mic. You know what I mean? And I think that's important. Um, is to be able, because you can be a co-conspirator without always having to be the doer.
Mm.
Being there and saying, no, they have the right to speak. I can't speak to, you know, the experience of what it feels like for the anti-Asian experience.
Mm.
Asian, I can't speak to that. I
Mm.
don't live that. But what I can do is say, look, we are in this together, and this is your moment for you to make sure that you are seen.
Mm.
But we're going to make sure that nobody is going to infringe on your moment to have your voice.
Mm.
Sorry, they're speaking. Please wait.
Mm.
You know, these are issues that you need to listen to,
Mm.
right? My thriving to me is having the time to do the things that I love. Um,
Mhm.
so that it doesn't feel like work. I don't
Mhm.
want to feel like, I know what it feels like to work. I've been working since I was 15. I know what that feels like. Work is not fun,
No.
okay? Work is not fun. Having a job is not fun. Having a career
Mhm.
is not getting up every day and being like, oh my God, you know, what is it, coming to America? Good morning, my neighbors. It's not that every day, but it's like, you know what? My neighbors are really trying me, but I really do love them. And I'm gonna get up today because they might bring me my coffee today. Like they might actually have coffee that tastes good, and I'm not gonna have time to get coffee, but I enjoy being around them. I just may not enjoy this moment, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Being able to say, I love what I do. I don't love it every day, but I love what I do. I want to know what that feels like again, because I did have that once. I
Mm.
did. I did. And really, honestly, Zach, where we can, happiness for me is not feeling like I always have to remind people of my greatness and my light.
Mm.
And I want that feeling for others too. I want, like Zach, I don't want you to always have to be reminded of your greatness and your light.
Mm.
I want you to be acknowledged for it. Like, yo, Zach, you're great, bro. But not like, Zach, you're great. Like, you know what I mean? That there's a difference in that tone.
Mm.
Like, I want to live, I want to thrive in a society where we all recognize the divine entity in each other and love each other as such. Because when I see you, I see me. And if you're good, I'm good. We're good. Because
Mm.
that's what family is. We don't always like each other.
Mm.
I got some brothers right now that I really don't like. Told you I'm one of six. I have two brothers. We're not getting along that great, but I love them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And they I want them to thrive, even in an argument.
Mm.
And that's the energy that I want all of us to take out into the world. Like, I really don't like this person right now, but I love you enough to let you know that you deserve to thrive.
Mm.
Um,
Wow. I want to ask you one more. That kind of that struck a chord with me because on my best days, that's the vision I have for the world too, of seeing like we're all a collective family, we're all tied together. We don't have to be reminded of our like divine spark and our beauty. It's in our common language. That's like how we
mhm.
interact with each other. Um, before we go, I know this hour just like flew by, but for the K through 16 educators out there, you've been around the block, you've seen a lot of stuff, you've lived. What is a piece of advice that you would give K through 16 educators, whether it be a principal, an administrator, a teacher, wherever, student, I don't know. What piece of advice would you give folks to create that kind of beloved community that you just spoke of?
May I give three, and I'll make them quick.
Wait, no, please.
Um, the first is, don't forget why you're doing it,
Mm.
whatever it is, and hopefully it is well intentioned. That word intention's intense, right? Um, don't forget why you're doing it and why you love it. Um, be for a child what it is that you either received or that you wish that you received
Mm.
in an adult,
Mm.
right? Like legit.
Mm.
Treat a child like they're your own. That
Mm.
goes a lot, even if you don't have kids. My students taught me how to be a great mom.
Mm.
My daughter is probably one of the luckiest kids I think in life. Because my teenagers that I taught me how to be a great teenage mom. I'm ready, I hope, right? Be a great pseudo parent for these kids because they spend more time with you than they will with their parents in a lot of instances, their biological parents.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and as the great Tupac, you know, you may not physically change the world. I'm gonna abridge that.
Mm.
You are changing the world. You're changing the world because you are sparking other lights
Mm-hmm.
that are going to change the world. Be intentional as an artist on those canvases because the paint that you leave on them is permanent. It's
Mm.
not temporary. You
Mm.
know, you can't get acrylic out of your clothes. I've tried. Be mindful in that,
Mm.
you know, because whether you recognize it or not, even the most misunderstood, who we call Bebe's kids, right?
Mm.
Even the Bebe kid, the misunderstood. I call that baby the misunderstood, the one that's in need of what they used to, what did McDonald's used to have? The max size. That's the one that really, really needs the love. And
Mm.
it's okay to ask them sometimes, like, do you need a hug?
Mm.
Um, I know COVID's changed that, but it's okay. Once you get vaccinated, you can give hugs again. Do you need a hug?
Mm.
Um, because we're all navigating this thing called life, and none of us know what the hell we're doing. We got a good idea, but we have no clue what we're doing.
Mm.
And I love y'all. I love you all.
That's what it is. No, I couldn't say it better. Yeah, we're all on this journey. We don't know what the hell we're doing, but if we come at it with love, tenderness, care, I don't know, the spark of the brain, of the heart, of the gut, of the soul, we
And
could
some good hip hop. We'll be good.
good hip hop. I love the shirt. Nasty Nas represent. I saw him at Century City once, and he did a free concert, and he's just out here rapping pro bono for the people. Like it was dope.
I know that excites you because you're in LA, but I lived in New Jersey for 11 years, and New York City does something amazing called Summer Stage.
Hey.
So we get free concerts all the time on the East Coast. There we go, that East Coast, West Coast beef, right?
But I still love you. I still love you.
Like, aren't you from LA? Yeah, I am, but nobody asked. Nobody asked. From New York till I die. My mom's gonna watch this. Like, are you though? Like, really, mom? You're messing up my gangster. Like, let me wear my Yankee fitted to my eyeballs and let me rock my tin boots on the beach, mom, in peace.
You do you. You do you. This has been a lot of fun. If you could stay after and we could talk a little bit about life, I would love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this has been so good. Mahagoney Borrayo-Gilchriest, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sending you blessings for the next chapter in your life, and I'm just glad that our spirits crossed each other because this is special. And yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. CommunityWorksInstitute.org. Check us out. Joe Brooks, thank you again for letting us be in this space. Spotlight series is on Fridays, and on Sundays we're gonna have some new cool guests. Probably not as cool as Mahagoney, let's be real, but please still tune in because they deserve love as well, just as Mahagoney taught us. And thank you everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and above all else, stay curious and keep loving yourself and others. And thank you.
And in love. Thank you guys.
Peace, y'all.